many, many times when I do a clearing, at the end of it, a family member from the other side or someone that knew the homeowner, the business owner that was getting the clearing done will come on through and say, "Hey, I've got something to say." And today, I want to share with you one of those examples. If you're new to this channel, I really, really want you to subscribe because I know that you're passionate about spirits, crossing over process, and all of these videos are focused to help you on your journey. This session is going to be really great because we're going to cover a couple of things. Now, when I do these sessions, my goal is to educate, to assist, to uplift, to also encourage, to open up possibilities so more and more people can connect with their loved ones, individuals that are crossing over, etc., in efforts to kind of bring back that understanding of how important it is to help the people that we love and that we care about and people just in general to cross over in their transition. And if you're doing this work, this is one of those videos you're going to really want to watch to the end. So I'm going to cover a couple of things in here. I'm going to cover how not every house, surprise, sometimes you get the surprise where you look around and nothing needs to get cleared. Moving into a new house, how important that is. I want to talk about some differences in mediumship techniques just to kind of refresh you on, thinking in terms of how everyone's intuition is unique and maybe thinking about your own intuition. And then I want to talk about how family members love to pop in. And I just think there's a part of me that just thinks it's absolutely adorable. So recently, I was visiting a new home of an associate that I have, and it wasn't the intention to go in there and clear the property. Is there somebody on the property? Does it need to be cleared out? Here's my first piece of this session. I highly encourage every single person who moves into a new home, a new business, a new building, a new piece of land, a new RV, buys a new car, anything that you're going to spend a lot of time in, I highly, highly, highly recommend people do a clearing on that piece of property or that vehicle, whatever, or that office space. I really, really highly recommend this. This is a very old technique that in general you can find in cultures all across the globe. People have always known we need to clear out the old energy so we can bring in the new. We've lost that a little bit though recently, and I'm really hoping that that comes back. People start to acknowledge, hey, this needs to be cleaned out. Just like all the old furniture has got to get out of there. All the old, hopefully dirt, you go in there, wash it down head to toe, bring all your new stuff in there, and it's a fresh start. Same is true with energy. So for those of you that are out there doing clearings for spirits, please also consider starting to open up conversations with people you know who are moving into new locations, a new home, moving to a different town, anything like that. Any sort of life adjustment, new space. And again, I'm including office space as well. I've done a lot of clearings on office locations. So this was an associate. I happened to stop by her place to congratulate her on her new home purchase. It was really exciting. It felt good. Nothing really felt unusual. And the layout was really different. It was a very different layout for a home, and I was a little fascinated. I was a little interested because visually, not spiritually, visually, human Bo looked around and went, wonder what happened around here. And it sparked my curiosity. So I kindly asked my associate, I said, hey, can I just tap in? Are you comfortable with that? I'm just really curious about what's going on, what the previous owners, how they had used the space. And she was like, absolutely, absolutely. One of the great things that I love about talking to her and hanging out with her, and the chances that I get to hang out with her, is that she doesn't, she's not that person that says, hey, what's around me? What's around me? And sometimes you run into that. So it was refreshing to be able to ask her instead of her, asking me, hey, can I check in? She was like, yeah. So I knew the previous owners had passed away, and I was looking for that. And the female previous owner, she was elderly when she passed, came through, was talking about how, and it made sense because it looked like a workshop right? And so I was asking her about that workshop, and it was really retro. It was just the coolest space. She was talking about how she made, I can't remember everything that she said, but it was like she made candles with like, you know, fake flowers and things like this. So she made arrangements of sorts, and she was really proud of it. She was talking about how she never really, got out there in the world to do this, but that she was really excited about future people that she's, watching over and things like this, getting out in the world and really kind of, especially the women in her line, getting out there and making something for themselves and bringing their art and their creativity out in the world, which by the way is why this couple moved into this house. That's, I would put money down on that. But we get done and it was interesting and it was neat, and I talked to the male spirit, was kind of there, not really strong. We're coming up on a key point here. And it was like he wasn't connected. Here's the key point. When you go into a home and you do a clearing and you run across spirits who were attached to the home at some point but are crossed over, not stuck. So let me say that again. You go into a home purchased perhaps by a new person, previous deceased owners who are already crossed over in their transition and not stuck can be really hard to connect with. Why is this? Because when a medium is connecting and working with a living person, in this case, my associate, the closer the people are to this associate in this lifetime and to her higher self, the easier it is for me as a medium to connect with them. So this associate of mine didn't have any connection at all to the previous owner other than purchasing this home after the previous owner had already passed. So when you're tapping in and trying to connect with someone who is not stuck, who's already crossed over and really has no connection to any of the living people around you currently in that moment, it can be harder to grab onto. If there's a purpose for it, if it's really meaningful, they'll come through. They'll come through and they'll pull in. But this, I mean, there was really nothing to communicate. So there we stood. I got a little information from the female that had lived there, a little super small bit of information from the male that had lived there. It was tougher because I was stretching to try to connect with them because neither of them were energetically connected to the living person that I was reading for in that moment. And that was really about it. And I opened up, intuitively. And so my associate said, "Can I just check in real quick? Because I know what you do. Is this place cleared?" And a woman came through from the other side who was very strong, very intense. I had a tough time. She came through very clearly. So I knew she was indeed linked to the living person that owned the home. But I couldn't figure out how. And sometimes that's not important, right? What's important is the message. And so I was trying to figure it out. But in the end, the woman that came through said, before they even moved in, she was talking about the living couple, before they even moved in, I came in here and made sure it was cleared. So I just smiled because that happens a lot. It happens a lot. We're really watched over. It's not always, doesn't always land on our living shoulders as people who are out there doing this work to clear everything. That's not it. We're kind of like the second shift cleanup crew, if you think about it, because the first shift is already on duty. And if there's other things that need to happen and have a living person engage with someone stuck, then that happens. So this woman came through, said, that it was all clear, everything was good. And I was still kind of also talking to the male that had lived there before, still trying to get any information from him that I could. And that's when my associate asked the next question, which was great because it opened up more clear communication that happened. And that's when mediumship shifted for me. And that's when the loved ones came in and said, "Hey, while you're here, can we just say a few things?" And it was great because what she asked was, is there anything, because we were asking the previous owner, is there anything about the house that she needs to know about to take care of it, really? And I started to get some information came through pretty quickly. And then it started coming through even more clearly. And I had that that medium thought of like, wow, all of a sudden the previous owner now is pulling in real tight, and so it's becoming more clear. And then that's when I went, wait a minute, no, this feels completely different. This isn't the previous owner. This is someone else. And that can happen with mediumship. You can not necessarily know that you've shifted from one person to another, especially when they're very similar. And the previous owner was very similar to this new spirit that was coming through. Turns out he was related to my associate. So he was related to the living person that moved into the home. And I knew this because one of one of the ways that my mediumship works, and this is where I want to re-invite you into thinking about all the different ways your mediumship can utilize your five senses to connect with you, the signs, the different ways that they can show things. This is kind of a go-to for me when they come through, and it's like a grandparent. And I knew that right away because I kind of have this bowling pin kind of plan where they, I can kind of energetically see where they're falling on the family tree. And so I knew it was a grandfather, but I wasn't sure how close they were or anything like this. The next thing he showed me was he showed me the person that I was reading, he showed me her at I think like 2 years old, if I remember correctly. When I see that, when somebody comes through and shows the sitter at a particular age, that typically means that that's when that person passed, was when the sitter was at that age. So when this grandfather came through, he was like, I could tell he was on dad's side, I believe, if I remember correctly. And but more so, I remember him showing the person that I was reading at around 2 years old, very young, which would tell me that he passed when she was around that age. And she did confirm it. So now we know who this is. Now we know, coming through more strongly, definitely lined up, showed through some of the symbols that I rely on. And then in turn, was stronger, was just everything was coming through stronger. And I could also kind of feel the care and love around his answers because he dove right into talking to her about the house. Okay, there's some support thing up in the roof over there, and you've got a water issue somewhere around the outside of the house where water's pooling, and you need to take care of that. And he just dope. You could feel his love of fix it. I don't know why, but you could feel his love of like repair was so important to him, so important to him. And it was really sweet and it was really beautiful. And another family member came through as well. Those messages were pretty connective just to the individual. So this was really the only one that came through talking about the house structure, about them moving in. Make sure you look at this, make sure you look at that. But it was really sweet. It was really sweet. And it did. She contacted me the next day. Turned out her grandfather had owned a hardware store. That all makes sense. That all kind of comes together. And those little fun pieces, sometimes you never find out because sometimes you never get the feedback, and that's fine. That's not what it's about. It's about showing up and being present and doing the work. But it's kind of fun sometimes to get that feedback as well, to be like, that makes sense. That's why he loved fix-it stuff. That's why he loved repairs. But in summary, here's what I want you to take out of this session. A few things. Not every house needs to be cleared upon somebody moving into it. Sometimes a loved one on the other side, an ancestor even, sometimes we don't even know them. Maybe it's a guide watching out for us. If they know it's for the highest good and an immediate need, they may do a clearing of the entire house before somebody moves in at all. So does that mean that we need to do clearings for people that move into homes? No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. But it's always good to double check. It's always good to double check. And it's good even if the person who's moving into the home does their own version of a smoke ceremony or a clearing out ceremony or GCP around their own home and filling it up with their own energy. Doesn't matter. Do it yourself, hire a professional, but it's always worth taking a second look. And sometimes you're going to find that the house was already previously cleared, which is wonderful. The other thing too is every medium's information comes through differently and unique. And over time, you're going to start to establish certain patterns with communication. For me, one of my many patterns is when someone comes through and shows the sitter that I'm reading at a particular age, it typically means that that person coming through passed when the sitter was that age. That's just, I'm only giving you that as an example to stay open to all the different ways they can show you things. And you're going to start to see a pattern, and then they're going to rely on your patterns as well to help you understand what's coming through. Another thing I want you to take away from this is that when you're trying to connect with spirits who are already crossed over, not connected to any of the living people around you in the moment that you're trying to work with, it can be harder to get information. It can be like you're pulling. But the minute you tap into spirits who are crossed over already on the other side, not stuck. I know we talk a lot about stuck spirits here on this channel, but crossed over loved ones, if they're connected to the living person that you're reading, they're going to come through a lot more clearly. And lastly, I guess we're watched over. We're watched over. So if you have a friend or anyone you know that moves into a new home, ask them if they want, a quick little clearing so that they can start from scratch and, get all of their good energy moved into the house along with their furniture. And, maybe a family member will pop in. Because in the end, that was the purpose of this entire session, was to talk about how that happens, and it happens quite frequently. I always find it very adorable. I find it in the category of, you go in and you get the job done. I don't rarely get interrupted doing the job of clearing any energy or spirits. But when I'm done, it's very frequent that someone will come through and say, hey, by the way, while you're here, could you just tell them this one little tidbit? That would be great. And it happens quite frequently. So keep doing clearings, keep clearing space, helping spirits cross over, and stay open to sometimes a little bit more information that comes through. Who knows? This could have been a different situation, and it would have made complete sense to me that I got called in to do a brand new house clearing, like somebody just moved in. Turns out the house was already cleared, but maybe there was another relative that had some important information for them. So stay open, watch your patterns, and please help me bring back into light the importance of clearing space when you first move into it. Not only for you, not only for the homeowner, not only for the business owner, but for those who may be stuck. Why? Because it's important to move them over. I know you thought what I was going to say it's important to cross them over. It's important they go home. Now I will say it. Ghosts are people too.